You're retiring, still shopping usually.
Let's see. Lamentations 4 is going to be here in a bit. I had a different wallpaper up. I'll work on that later. All right, we've got Alice and David, Stuart and Andrew. Just a moment till we get started here. And we got Jerry, Sherry, and Abby. All right, number 227. Haven't heard any more from Aaron's brother-in-law, Ken's brother, about the heart attack. And we got Michael Shaheen listening. He said he would be tuning in. So, got a good crowd here. A little light here. We only got 6 in person. Sandy said she wasn't feeling good, and Chris said Lucille was sick, so they're at home. Number 227. Pen here. Number 227. Get there myself. On Zion's glorious summit stood a numerous redeemed by blood. They hymn their King and strength divine. I heard the song and strove to join. I heard the song and strove to join. Hear all who suffered sword or flame for truth or Jesus' lovely name. Shout victory now and hail the Lamb, and bow before the great I am. Bow before the great I am. While everlasting ages roll, eternal love shall feast their soul, and scenes of bliss forever new rise in succession to their view. Rise in succession to their view. Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of hosts on high, who like me thy praise should sing. Oh, holy, 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 Ye Lord. God of hosts, I adore. Holy, holy. All right, let's have our classes. Sorry for the choking there. Mary just want to show you at the house right now. That's live. Over that. Hopefully they'll scoot on down to Park City. Andrew told me it was coming to flood at Hardyville. I can see we're now getting it at the house. So hopefully everybody will get rain who needs it. That's probably everybody in this area right now. Turn, if you will, to Leviticus or Lamentations 4. A second here, a little trouble getting a hold of the mouse there. Lamentations 4, which already was here. All right, so we've been talking about Lamentations. Of course, it's about Jerusalem being taken into captivity and the things that are coming upon them. Last week's chapter took 3 weeks. It was very long, 66 verses. And so this week we're back to, I think the first two are 22 verses each, and this one is as well. Let's do some of the poetry in the way that Hebrew was laid out and the numbers of the letters. But he talks about, of course, Jerusalem being taken into captivity and just the things that are coming upon them. How is the gold become dim? How is the most fine gold changed? The stones of the sanctuaries are poured out in the top of every street. He just talks about that, how that their wealth and their goods have become dim, all the things that they had. You know, if someone's on their deathbed, what good does gold, anything sitting on a shelf or dresser or a stand by your bed do? It just becomes dim. How is the most fine gold changed? The stones of the sanctuary are poured out in the top of every street. The wealth that they had was just, it wasn't even being able to be used. The gold was dim. It had been changed. Stones were being poured out. There was nothing that they could buy or nothing that they could do. And so their financial ruin was just as much as their spiritual ruin as well. And so they really, were being ruined financially because there wasn't really anything they could do. The precious sons of Zion, comparable to fine gold, how are they esteemed as earthen pitchers, the work of the hands of the potter. The precious sons of Zion, like fine gold, now they were compared to clay pots, the work of the hands of the potter. They were just earthen, as opposed to these great things that they had, maybe positions and height that they had in society. They were now like just potter's vessels. They were made out of clay. Of course, there's probably some reference to the Lord having made them. They need to get rid of their thoughts of the gold and the precious things and realize that they were just earthen pitchers. They were just physical humans, and to not think about the wealth that they had, because that was gone. They're the work of the hands of the potter. Verse 4 or 3 of chapter 4. Interesting verse here. Even the sea monsters draw out their breasts. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people has become cruel like the ostriches in the wilderness. Just talks about how they had changed. There probably was cruelty among one another. Whenever you get to times where situations are bad, there often is cruelty and people taking from one another, stealing. You remember before, or as the captivity was beginning, they had become so desperate, and I think it behooves mentioning that their food they had to go to what? Eating their young. They were consuming their own children, and that's horrible. And he talks about how they were treating one another. He says even the sea monsters, actually says jackals here, draw out their breast. Even the most, I guess, animal that you would consider certainly not domesticated, a sea monster, it says jackal here, something that's certainly not domesticated, they draw out their breast. They will feed their young, and you're not. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people has become cruel, like the ostriches in the wilderness. Just like animals. As a matter of fact, it talks about, I think, was it Job that had mentioned that the ostriches, they forget where their eggs are, and there's some references. Job 39:13. Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks, or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaveth her eggs in the earth, and warmeth them in the dust, and forgetteth that the foot may crush them, or the wild beast may break them. She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain without fear. So he talks about how the ostriches treated their young. They would just forget about them and let them go. And he says, my people have become, unlike even wild animals, sea monsters, jackals, that will feed their young, you become cruel like the ostrich. And they had toward their young ones. Are there any questions or comments on this? And I know certainly during times of war, people sometimes will just leave their young, or they'll have to be left behind. I don't know for sure where Larry, I know he's in Vietnam, but what was one of the most, I guess, sad casualties of a war like Vietnam? What was left behind so much? There'd be orphans, wouldn't there, and just children left behind they couldn't take. Just one moment here. I was asking Andrew something about the broadcast there. We've been tweaking a little bit with the new equipment. So the people of Jerusalem had become cruel to their young people. We know they were already consuming. They were leaving them behind. The tongue of the sucking child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. As I was going over this lesson, actually Monday for today, I was thinking about how sad this is to not feed your children. But they didn't have food themselves. The tongue of the sucking child, but it didn't have to be this way if they'd served the Lord. The tongue of the sucking child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. Can you imagine young children asking for food and not giving them any? They that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. Those who ate really good food. One of the phrases I've used, I'm talking about prayers, especially for sweets, are dainties, the royal dainties. A second. All right. Talks about very fine food. Andrew said, look perfect. Thank you, Andrew. I went full screen and made a big difference on how well to control it. We're going to read this verse in a few minutes. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Incline not mine heart to any evil thing, to practice wicked works with men that work iniquity, and let me not eat of their dainties. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. What are dainties? We were discussing ice cream earlier. I don't know that dainties would be ice cream per se, but something comparable. Dainties were tasty or savory food, delectable food, very good food that people had. The fine things, such as pastries and cakes and the such like. I'll see if this is dainties the same, because we'll be looking at this in Genesis 49 in just a minute. It's just food and delight. It was something that was really good, as opposed to, you may love them, and I do too with cornbread, but say pinto beans might not be considered a dainty, a really fine food that you would serve, at a president's table. There's nothing wrong with them. It was part of mine, Jerry, and Alice's, all of ours main meals as we were growing up. But then there were treats that would sometimes be brought home. Desserts of various things, maybe some kind of donuts or cookies. I can remember specifically my grandfather bringing home those. Remember in the blue bag, those Chip Ahoy chocolate chip cookies? Those were royal dainties, and loved them. But these were people that did eat delicately. They that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They're now on the streets, are homeless, basically. They that were brought up in scarlet embraced dunghills. I really thought about this week. These people that had eaten these fine foods, they'd been brought up in scarlet, which would be very good, fine clothing, and now they were having to embrace and maybe cover up with a dunghill. You know what that is, just where manure is piled. Can you imagine going from your fine home to living, not just in a dump, but where waste is, a sewer? Their lives had dropped that much. It's because they had left the Lord. I was thinking about that they had left these wonderful places, now are embracing dunghills or ash heaps. Why? For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hands stayed on her. You think about how bad that Sodom was. Fire rained down from heaven and destroyed. Only a handful made it out. And we know their sins. They were even wanting to commit physical acts with angels. It's hard to believe, but they were. But he says these sins are greater, their punishment is, than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hand stayed on her. The Lord also addressed this earlier or not earlier than this, but later in the Bible. It talks about how Sodom would have repented if they had had these things done here. In Matthew 10, I was looking at which one, 15, verily I say to you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Talking about a city that doesn't receive them. He actually mentions Capernaum. If the works which had been done in Sodom had been done in you, or had been done in Sodom, if the works done in you, Capernaum, had been done in Sodom, they would have repented. It would be more tolerable in the day of judgment for Sodom than for you. And so, it talks about they were overthrown and no hands stayed on her. There was no one there to help Sodom, and your punishment is worse than that. We'll continue on. This is only one of 6 times that rubies are mentioned in the Bible. Her Nazarites are purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. I may have said ours were. Her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. So he mentioned some very pure things here. Rubies are only mentioned in 6 verses in the Bible. I'll just show you those quickly. Job once, Proverbs 3 times. This is the last time. Lamentations 4:7. But it talks about how pure they had been. Nazarites actually says nobles here. But you remember Nazarites would take a vow to be closer to the Lord. They wouldn't have anything to do with any grapes, the juice, or raisins, or the husk, or anything. They couldn't touch any dead body. They let their hair grow. They couldn't cut it during this time. And they said they were purer than snow. They were doing so good. They were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. The word ruddy here, I will look that up. Get to the right word here.
Also look up what Sodom and Gomorrah mean, the two cities. Sodom,
What they mean.
what the name Sodom means.
All right. The word here for ruby is the Hebrew word. Adam, do you know it? The Hebrew word for ruddy? It's Adam. That's why I did that. To be red or dyed red. And so they were pure. You don't want a ruby that was washed out. I didn't mean to catch you off guard, Adam, but I didn't know the Hebrew word. Adam is probably it. And if you want us to call you that, we will. Adam. But that is the word for to be red. And so they were more red in body than rubies. Let me look up here. I'll actually look it up in the Old Testament to look up Sodom and Gomorrah both here.
Yes, what the name reads.
All right. Sodom, Larry was asking, means burning. And Gomorrah means submersion. It's just like covered and they were burning. Both of them, they were covered with fire. That's interesting. Did you already know those, Larry?
I did not.
And that's what they mean. Hope no one thinks I'm making light, but it's a little play on words in English. If your landscaper can't get to you, he said, well, we'll come and we'll Sodom Gomorrah. We'll Sodom Gomorrah. We'll fix your yard tomorrow. But anyway, moving along. But they were so pure. They were purer than snow, whiter than milk, more red in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Probably the red had to do with more of a healthy look. Because whenever you get sick and near death, you don't look good. You look, what? Pale. And people do. And I think what's being talked about here, their polishing was like a sapphire. They were fixed up so good, everything was fine. The people that were serving, they were just on top, but now they had really fallen. Their visage, it says now their appearance is blacker than soot. Their visage is blacker than coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered, it has become like a stick. In other words, we've already talked about the lack of food. What's it talking about happening to them here? Probably getting very thin. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. Not as healthy as a horse. And so it's withered. It's become like a stick horse, if you will. Continue the analogy. But sometimes people talk about eating like a horse. And so they were not. There was no food. They were becoming black. Their skin was just withering up and cleaving to their bones. It's withered, it says. It's become like a stick. I'm thinking about only doing half the chapter because we've gone over a lot of stuff. I don't want to go through these too quickly because there's no telling how long it'll be before we go over Lamentations again. Honestly, there's so much, I probably won't be on this earth by the time it comes back around. They that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. For those pine away, stricken through for want of the fruits of the field. I really was reading this chapter this week, and it really just struck me. He said it'd be better to be killed with a sword than it would be to be slain with hunger. There are a lot of people, even in the world today, that are suffering from hunger. I know you've seen a lot, maybe on the news, or mostly see things pop up on the Gaza. We were talking about that. There's a lot of hunger right now going on, and we've been blessed. We all come back after lunch, and often the first question we ask each other is, what? What'd you eat? What'd you get? Did you go to Sonic? Did you go to Dairy Queen? We know that the food is there. We know that it'll be available, and we have plenty of it. We really have been blessed. I can't imagine to have true hunger. I don't know if there's ever been a time in our nation as a whole that there's just been really a lack of food. You know, even whenever people first came over, they, were obviously greeted with Indians and food was provided. There was a lot of stuff here. And, food has always been, I know times were tough in the 30s with the Depression, but there was still food overall being produced, even able to have soup kitchens. As I know I've mentioned many times, I did ask Mom how it went with them during the Depression, and they were blessed. She said, we never knew the difference. It was about the same because they always had their own food. They did their own meat and had garden, had eggs, and really didn't notice any difference of what was happening. And so the Lord blessed them. Really put, I'm sure it's that way with a lot of rural people that grew their own food. Probably Depression hit people more that lived in New York that couldn't produce their own food and, big cities like that. But it'd be better to be killed with a sword than to be slain with hunger. And those that slain with hunger, these pine away, stricken through for want of the fruits of the field. They're just desiring the fruits of the field. Let's read 2 more verses and we'll pause. It'll be about right. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children. It's a little plainer in New King James. The hands of the compassionate women, they weren't bad women, they were compassionate, have cooked their own children. You can't get any plainer than that. They became food for them in the destruction of the daughter of my people. I know it's a little uncomfortable to look at, but we need to do it here. Whenever they came to the king. We'll see when this happened, and probably others as well. The king said to her, they'd come to the king of Israel was passing by upon a wall. There cried a woman to him, saying, help, my lord, O king. He said, if the Lord doesn't help you, whence shall I help thee? Out of the barn floor or out of the wine press? He's basically, I don't have anything to give you. And the king said to her, what aileth thee? And she answered, this woman said to me, give me my son that we may eat him today, and we will eat. Give thy son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. This bothers me to read this. So we boiled my son and did eat him. And I said unto her the next day, give thy son that we may eat him. And she hath hid her son. When the king heard it, he tore his clothes. And he went to blame Elisha for this. But you remember, just, of course, this is all brought on them because of their sins. And let me get back to the Lamentations. It talks about this had happened. They were compassionate women. I can't imagine getting so far into hunger and desperation you'd cook a child. But they did. One more verse. The Lord hath accomplished his fury. He hath poured out his fierce anger and hath kindled a fire in Zion and hath devoured the foundations thereof. His anger had just caused them all of this to happen because of their sins. They had gone into a terrible state indeed. And obviously we just looked at it when it happened. They mentioned again in Lamentations. That's something no doubt stuck with them. And they remembered these things happening. Are there any questions or comments? I didn't actually mean to split up this chapter, but there was more to discuss than I thought we would take. I discussed it a little bit deeper, but that's okay. It's no better for us of what awaits us if we're not serving the Lord. It's far worse than this or anything could have happened. Okay, are there any questions or comments while I while I go get them out of class? Give me just a second here. Sorry about that. Still learning a few things here as I all right, let me get back to where I was at. This few minutes we'll be looking at Genesis 49. Anything else on this chapter, or this half chapter? I think I'd split one of these 22 verses into half, but let's go to Genesis 49 and be ready here. take a quick little break while I wait for them. Sorry they have the songs up. I figured that would be much of a break. I won't even take one. They need to copy off safely. Sherry Crabtree said the son. Sherry, if you're listening, I just now saw your setup that you've got there of singing and Bible. Looks really good. Appreciate you sending that. All right, let's sing a song before we do. Well, Ruby, mark for this class, we went, I'll remember it though, Lamentations 4, 1 through 11. One of the last and only time that rubies are mentioned in the Bible's in that section. Number 286. Number 286. And then we'll look at Genesis 49, which we actually referenced a while ago. Wonderful story of love, tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love, wake the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful story of love, wonderful story of love, though you are far away, wonderful story of love, still he doth call today, calling from Calvary's mountain, down from the crystal bright fountain, lead from the dawn of creation, wonderful story of love, wonderful, 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 wonderful story of love, wonderful story of love, Jesus provides a rest. Wonderful story of love, for all the pure and blessed, rest in those mansions above us, with those who've gone on before us, singing the rapturous chorus. Wonderful story of love, wonderful, 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 wonderful story of love. All right, turn, if you will, to Genesis 49. Just a second here. All right. Let me check my announcements. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything else from Erin. Let me text her. I never did even acknowledge it so that she can know. All right. We announced. And we'll pray. Keep us posted. All right. I wanted to at least confirm, let her know we got it. All right, Genesis 49. I think we'll do just this one chapter today. And it actually is going to reference about the royal dainties that they had. All right, Genesis 49, 33 verses. Jacob is going to be giving his farewell blessings to his children. It seems like certainly maybe I wonder if the Lord had told him what to say, because these were almost like prophecies that would come to pass. And here's what the blessing is upon him. Some not so good. So let's look as he gives his final farewell blessings to his children. And Genesis 49:1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. That obviously seems like something that he knew about, some foresight. Gather yourselves together and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. It's interesting, he calls them sons of Jacob, but then he calls himself Israel. Both used there. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Of course, a firstborn child is going to be no doubt held very special and in high esteem. But, of course, Reuben has a sin that I wonder even if he knows his father knows about. Let's see, I misspelled Reuben. Right here, it's a little plain, but Genesis 35. When Israel dwelt in the land, it came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went up and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Israel heard it. That's all said about it. That's all that's said about it. That he went and he lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, basically his father's wife, he committed adultery with. And I go back to that to mention what he says here. But he does say, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, beginning of all his children, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed, thou defilest it. He went up to my couch. It's interesting how he changes person here. He goes from first person to third, almost like a dismissal of him. But he says, you're unstable as water, and you shall not excel. And he says it very plainly, because you went up to thy father's bed. He refers to himself in the third person. Then defiled it. He went up to my couch. Basically, you committed adultery with my wife. His concubine, which wasn't legally a wife, but it was like a wife. And so he said, you will not excel. Because I wonder if Reuben knew that he knew until this point. If not, it would have come as a shock. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. What did they do that was so cruel? They were full brothers.
They went to the city that their sister had been.
Yeah, their sister, Larry had it correct there. Their sister Dinah had been taken. This man wanted her, had committed fornication with her, and took her, and he wanted to marry her. And they tricked the city, Simeon and Levi did, say, if all of you will be circumcised and become as one of us, we'll make marriages with you. And they did, and while they were sower the third day, they went in, two of them killed all the city, the men, and took the women and little ones in their spoil. He calls them instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Oh, my soul. It seems like, I'm not saying this every time, but probably the worst event that these brothers had did is now coming to light. I picture it almost like a judgment. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into thy secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. Basically, I don't want any part really to do with them because of what they did. One more verse about them. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So, Levi was scattered because the priests came from it. They lived everywhere. I don't know that we know too much about some of the things of the tribe of Simeon. But he says, I'm going to tell you the things that will befall them in the last day, and no doubt the Lord gave him this information. Verse 8. Judah. Before I even read further, Judah, who came from the tribe of Judah? Jesus did. Jesus descended from Judah. Someone said it, I think, Adam. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Of course, no doubt talking about Christ and ruling. And I know they couldn't understand these things at this time. I doubt that Jacob did. Well, we know, we're told in the New Testament that angels and prophets desired to look into the things about Christ. But he said, your brethren will praise you. Thy hand shall be the neck of thine enemies. And Judah wasn't perfect, obviously, as a person. You remember what he did? He committed adultery with a woman he thought was a harlot. But what relation was she? He was his daughter-in-law. And when he found out she was with child, by him, he didn't even know it. What did he want to do? He said, let her be brought forth. Ruby said, kill her. He wanted to stone her. Or be burnt, I think she said. And she basically said, it's your child. Obviously, that's not even a paraphrase. That's not what he said. But she showed it was him. And he said, she's been more honorable than me. And so Judah wasn't perfect by any means. But your brethren will praise you. Thy hands shall be the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. I can't help but think of Revelation 5, the lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus is called. Judah is a lion's whelp. I'm asking for information now. What is a whelp? It's a really young animal, isn't it? A pup, like. It's just brand new. Judah is a lion's whelp. And so, like, just getting started. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? So he's talking about like him being as a lion, that no one can disturb him, who shall rouse him. And so he is like a lion, just hunkered down. And he can't be disturbed. Of course, this is no doubt referring to Jesus. He's going to be born of Judah. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. Obviously, the rule of Christ will be forever. The scepter, which a king has, or queen, but king in this case. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, like being born, until Shiloh come. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. All right, Shiloh no doubt refers to Jesus here. Let me look up this word Shiloh and what it could mean. Shiloh, it's only used this one time. He whose it is, that which belongs to him. Tranquility. Just that's a word, what it means, like peace. And he refers to him until Shiloh come. It's just interesting, this word is given, no doubt, to Christ, like peace and tranquility. And unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Of course, church. The church and salvation. A lot said about Judah here. Binding his foal into the vine, and his ass's coat into the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. I'll go ahead and read one more verse about Judah. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Some of this we may not know. I think we could guess some things mean. Maybe the foal and the ass. Could be when he rode into Jerusalem. His garments, he washed his garments in wine. Probably his sacrifice, his blood, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Because, grapes would stain comparable to what blood would. Perhaps as the donkey here, the ass, it says, foal, it doesn't, ass's coat to the choice vine. Maybe when he was coming in and then the crucifixion taking place. His eyes shall be red with wine and his teeth white with milk. Maybe, no doubt, some bloodshed here of coming of what's going to happen, teeth white with milk. I don't know what it means. His teeth, referring to Jesus, no doubt, here in this passage. It's white as milk, just purity, representing. And also, what proceeds from your mouth? What I'm doing now. Words and speaking. That may be some reference to that. His teeth white with milk. From Jesus' teeth would become like the purest teachings of all. Maybe. And if you remember, it's interesting how this ties back together. Let's go back and find the word rubies. I didn't even tie this together till now. It's amazing how these Nazarites were whiter than milk. So it refers to milk. Her Nazarites appeared in snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. See what we picked up in class, Ruby. What is the Hebrew word for ruddy or red? Adam. That's it. Yeah, that is it. And so his eyes, so we've learned some Hebrew today. His eyes shall be red with wine and his teeth white with milk. Probably the purity here. And Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea. Some of these where it tells us where they dwell is how we get these maps back here. I was looking. the 12 tribes here if we have it anywhere. I don't see it right here, but that's how we get a lot of these maps. But it says, Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea. He shall be for a haven of ships, and his border shall be undecided. That's all it says about Zebulun. I can almost see, because they were brothers, maybe Zebulun leading over Judah. Why'd you get more than me? Why did Father say much more about you? Well, they had no clue. And Judah, like I said, fornication with his own daughter-in-law, he wasn't perfect, but Jesus, obviously. I think it's part of the reason maybe Judah was picked. Out of sinful man became a perfect person, the Son of God. Any of them would have been sinful. Couldn't have picked one that was sinless. Issachar is a strong ass. Ass, that's the old German pronunciation. I don't know. Issachar is a strong ass, couching between two burdens. That was a contraction between ass and couching. Issachar is a strong ass, couching between two burdens. All right. And he saw that rest was good, and that the land was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. That's all that he says about Issachar. I don't know how he's a strong ass, just maybe a nation of people, of hard workers. But it does say they became a band of slaves, as people did. He became a servant of tribute. This was going to be the things that happened. Dan shall judge his people. I want you to think, we'll talk about Dan just for a few minutes. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Perhaps they would be a judge. A judge would come from Dan. I did not look this up ahead of time, and I probably should have. But did any judge come from the tribe of Dan? I'll look it up here real quick. Samson. Of course, I should have known. But if you'd asked me what tribe Samson was of, I don't know that I didn't know Dan right offhand. Samson was a Nazarite, which I knew. But the most well-known judge from the tribe of Dan is Samson. If I sound like I was hesitating there a little bit, pardon me, let me go back to... All right, Dan shall judge his people. And now I can hear it in my head. Because what was Samson's father's name? Anyone know? Manoah. That's correct. And you'll see I was going to try Dan. Let me go a little further here about Dan. I should look this up ahead of time. My apologies. Where that you see about Dan here. The Spirit of the Lord moved him at times in the camp of Dan. All right. So that's probably maybe where they get it, and maybe more plain. And so Samson was in the camp of Dan when the Lord began to move him. And that may be how that they are saying he's from the tribe of Dan. It may be elsewhere, and if anyone finds it, feel free to correct me. So it didn't jump out at me because the way he moved him when he was in the tribe camp of Dan. But Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Samson was a judge. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path. It biteth the horse heel, so his rider shall fall back. Well, just Dan's going to be like a snake. And then it just says, I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. Dan is probably one of the worst tribes of Israel. Maybe it's why he's called a snake. He bites the rider. As a matter of fact, if you'll go back to Genesis 3:15, around that, where that, hitting wrong things here. Genesis 3:15. I'll just put in 3:1 and scroll down to it. But you'll see what that the Lord will have done to him. He's going to bruise the head of Satan, but look, Satan will bruise his heel. That's obviously the back of your foot. And so Satan's going to bruise his heel. And then you'll see that Dan is a snake that biteth the horse's heels. All this ties together. So he's a serpent. It's already said that Satan's going to bruise the heel of Jesus. And Jesus is not mentioned by name, of course, in Genesis, but he bites a horse heel. Of course, Genesis or Revelation talks about Jesus riding on the white horse. It says, rider shall fall backward. And so Dan was known for their idolatry. They had false gods in Dan. And the last time that Dan is ever mentioned in the Bible is Amos 8. You go all the way, he's never mentioned in the New Testament, Amos 8:14. Thy God, O Dan, liveth. They had false gods there. And that's sad because all the tribes are mentioned in Revelation as being in heaven except one tribe. It's Dan. He's left out of the list. If you go and look at Revelation, it's Revelation chapter 7. Let me just go to Revelation 7, where all the tribes are mentioned. There's Judah is mentioned first. That's fitting because Jesus from Judah. You see Asher, Manasseh. I won't name all of them. But Dan is left out. He's never mentioned again. And so I think the great sin of idolatry in their nation, in their tribe area. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. And so it's an interesting verse thrown in there. He's waited for the salvation, but seemed to never come to his tribe. Of course, some people, no doubt, Dan were saved. Let's quickly move on. It's 33 verses, I think. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. That's all it says. Out of Asher, his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. That's one of the 3 verses in the Bible that mention dainties, which is really good, fine food. So Asher is going to be known for his foods that they would produce. Royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. So Naphtali was going to be like a deer let loose, a hind. He uses beautiful words. Some of these don't have much. Joseph, a little more. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. You can picture just like some kind of crop that just cascades over a wall of flower. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. Probably references his brothers here, who had shot at him metaphorically and hated him, said they hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms in his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. A lot I could discuss in this in detail, but he was made strong by trusting in the Lord. Even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. So he would have, family and children. He did, of course, already, Manasseh and Ephraim. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. I really like the way it's worded. My ancestors. Your blessings are going to the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of him that was separate from his brother. The crown of the head of him. They shall be on the head of Joseph and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brother. So it refers to him as having a crown. He did rule. All right, now Benjamin, of course, they were full brothers. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. That was it. Maybe hunting in his tribe. Of course, Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin. And these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is it, that their father spake unto them and blessed them. Every one according to his blessing he blessed them. And he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Remember, he's only one of 6 people that says gathered into his people. I think there are 6. I know there's 6. And I think Abraham, of course, and Isaac was before him. And Hagar's son, what was his name? I drew a blank. Begins with an N, doesn't it? Hagar's son. I shouldn't draw blanks, but it happens as I get older. It's not Ishmael. I just couldn't think for a moment. And of course, Aaron and Moses as well. So 6 of them are mentioned. And he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered into my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. So he has to be buried back in Canaan, here in the field. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And our last verse today. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and yielded up the ghost and was gathered unto his people. I love that phrase, gathered unto his people. That's what we want to have happen to us at the end. All right, one more chapter of Genesis, and then we will be done with the book of Genesis. Okay, I don't think anyone does. Does anyone need the Lord's Supper? Okay, I didn't think so. All right. No one? All right. If you will, turn as a closing and invitation song. Do number 851. I know that all the adults are members of the Lord's body, but we always like to offer a song if anyone needs to obey in baptism. Or just keep in mind as you go out this week that you're going to live, that you will be gathered to your people. Don't forget our service tonight online at 6 o'clock. I did have another text from Erin. She just said thank you. So keep them in prayer. All right, if there's nothing else, let's stand and sing. Let's sing the third verse of 851, and we'll ask Adam to dismiss us. Just a few more weary days, and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away. Oh, glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away.
Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all our blessings. Be with us today and keep us safe. Be with all those who we've visited today and keep them in your prayers. And let us meet back here again next week. In Christ's name, amen. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, we'll see you. Larry, we'll see y'all.